Call this meeting of the Church-Cibolo Universal City Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that the notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is now 6 o'clock. Roll call.
All board members are present except Mr. Carew and Mr. Inman.
Mr. Carew did let me know that he's running late, but he should be here. And Mr. Inman said he may not be here. He's working. Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Flag. Allegiance to Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thanks everybody for coming. Let's have the Vice President's recitation of district mission, vision, values.
Our vision is to prepare every student to be a productive citizen. Our values are leadership, character, commitment, service, and learning. Our mission is SCUCISD provides a safe, secure, and challenging learning environment through the responsible use of all resources to afford opportunities for all students to realize their individual potential and become responsible and productive members of society. We have three priorities. Priority 1 is high achievement for all students. Priority 2 is high performing and engaged workforce. And priority 3 is effective and efficient district and campus operations.
And we will have the board recitation of board values.
We believe all students have the capacity to learn and be successful. We believe a safe, secure environment is paramount to learning.
We believe living our core values of leadership, character, commitment, service, and learning result in the ability to set and achieve lifelong goals. We believe quality instruction addresses the individual needs of students. We believe engaging, interactive, and authentic teaching creates empowered, active learners prepared for our changing world.
We believe embracing technology as a relevant tool enhances learning in and beyond the classroom. We believe in a professional learning community culture that allows time to collaborate and share best practices in order to improve continually.
We believe a good communication is critical to success. We believe lifelong learning enriches staff through professional development. We believe measures of our success go beyond standardized testing. We believe public education is defined by the local community with limited state involvement.
Thank you. Vice President, overview of good governance indicators and board member ethics.
So each month we try to highlight some of our good governance, and we have 10 good governance. And this month I'm going to go over number 9, which is the board has a written plan for the review and measurement of board advocacy for the district within the community and with other governmental entities. The board has an active plan for advocating for the district with legislators and other elected officials. We plan lists, activities that individual trustees or board as a whole will do to support the district's interests with legislators and other elected officials. And we have kind of gone through all our board member ethics that we follow. So I'm going to circle back through, and one of them is a student-centered focus. I will be continuously guided by what is best for all students of the district.
Thank you. Next, we have a report item from Paige Maloney.
Yes, thank you, President Westbrook. Dr. Gibson, members of the board, tonight we have a report item only. Our policy consultant, Abby Chalmers, is with us. As we reported at prior board meetings, we are undergoing a policy review, which is best practice every 6 to 7 years. And Ms. Chalmers, I will invite her for a quick report on what we've been working on for the past couple of days as cabinet and future steps.
There's a little button.
There we go. It gives me directions. Fabulous. Dr. Gibson, good to see you. Mr. President, members of the board, it is a pleasure for me to be here tonight, and I appreciate you. It looks like you have quite the busy agenda. I am not aware of school boards that have this much information packed into their June board meetings. It's usually a different looking agenda in the summertime, so I appreciate you fitting me into your schedule. I have had the opportunity to meet with your cabinet level administrators for half a day yesterday and then a pretty intense marathon session today. We did a review of your entire policy manual. You have 191 local policies in your manual, and we actually talked about 130 of those policies in the last 10 hours that we spent together. I have to tell you, it was really a phenomenal experience. The last time that your district had a policy review session was in 2012, so you were kind of on the mark for the timeliness of another review. And I have already received commitment from the district that they'll see me again in 5 or 6 years to, to do it again. I think that's how much time it might take all of us to recover from the 10 hours of policy talk that occurred. It really was truly a fabulous session, though. And in the last 5 years since your last review session, you've done a phenomenal job of keeping your manual up to date. The policies that we talked about, we were able to clean up some language, but it looks like when you did this in 2012, you had already spent a good deal of time cleaning up some of those policies. So kind of what will happen next is I go back to my office and I kind of digest everything that we talked about. I have my marching orders as to what policies need to change and what that looks like for you guys. I will then send a summary to Paige and Dr. Gibson that details policy by policy exactly what changes are being proposed for revision. They'll go over that, make sure that we're all on the same page, and then they will present that to you. We'll see kind of what the timeline and the structure of that looks like to make sure that it is digestible and you guys don't have to have a 10-hour marathon board session to review that. But at some point you will receive a brand new manual to review. You'll first review the recommended changes, and then you'll receive a brand new manual. You'll rescind all previous policy decisions that have been made and adopt your brand new manual as it's presented. There is built-in time for input and feedback and conversations with your administrators on that policy. But your team was awesome to work with. They had great conversation. They were honest. They were respectful. They were open, asking great questions and open to hearing what TASB recommends as best practice. But they were also very familiar with your values and beliefs and the way that you feel would be important to take policy and the purpose behind that. And so I think you'll be pleased with the recommendations that are coming forward to you. Do y'all have any questions for me as to what this process looks like, or if you... No? Well, again, I do appreciate Dr. Gibson's leadership and the work, and it really was a clean manual and a great training session and collaboration with the team and going through what is sometimes some kind of sticky, heavy, not all that exciting work, but it is important work. So, great.
Mr. Westbrook, if I may, so I know Abby doesn't probably get to hear this, but she really is a good policy analyst, and I think oftentimes we just call and say, this is what we need, and we hang up. And we've interacted with her on the phone a few times, and we thought we had a good one, and then, spending 24 hours with one nonstop, yeah, really, you find out what people are made of. But she kept us on track. She let us talk when we needed to talk. She stopped us when we had talked enough. And it was a really good process. And seriously, I want you to know a lot of the staff, even though, I mean, I'm hoarse and my eyes are bloodshot from reading and all that, but, at least 4 cabinet members said, man, this was awful but great all at the same time.
That's such a compliment.
I'm so good. Yeah, that's right. So it was just know that we went through everything very carefully for the last 24 hours, and thank you for joining us in that.
My pleasure.
We probably left 20 questions, but we narrowed that down from 400 questions down to 20 that are remaining. And then we did talk about incorporating the board policy committee into this process, and so we'll make sure that that's a part of the closing the loop with the full board.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Safe travels.
Next, we will have public comments. The Board of Trustees will now hear public comments. In order to provide consistency and fairness to all individuals, public comments will be heard in accordance with the Board Policy BED Local and procedures outlined in Administrative Regulation BED. Comments should be limited to topics such as policies, curriculum, and facilities. Any direct criticism of a specific employee will not be heard during public comments and should be considered separately as provided in board policy. In this context, individuals are cautioned to not identify any employee by name or by any combination of words or descriptions which could identify the employee to another individual. Public comments will be limited to individuals who signed up to participate in the public comment portion of the meeting before the board meeting was called to order. Delegations of 5 or more persons shall appoint one person to present their viewpoints. An individual who signed up to participate in the public comment portion of the meeting may not relinquish their time to another individual. No public comment shall exceed 5 minutes. To ensure compliance with time limitations, a yellow card will be held up by the board secretary at 4 minutes, and a red card will be held up at 5 minutes. If you have any issue you would like to discuss with an administrative staff member, complete the designated form located on the back table and place it in the wooden box. Your concern and contact information will be forwarded to the appropriate staff member. Grumpy Azus.
Thank you, Mr. President, board members, Dr. Gibson. I just got a few things to go over lightly. One of them, as I spoke before in the TRE, I don't think there is a good perception out there that this is a good idea for us to go with this year. And the other thing is, if we are not able to give our teachers a pay increase, my concern would be why go and hire 2 additional employees or $50,000+ school administrators. I would rather see that go to our teachers. I'm involved with a lot of teachers, and I listen to them. And of course, I've said it before, I had family members that they is teachers, and I know the struggle they go through, anywhere from high school to elementary school, they teach. It's sadly enough, they work so hard, but yet they're not getting paid much of what they deserve, and they have to go look for other jobs. So I'm trusting you to make sure that that area is taken care of most of all, because look at you sitting up there, look at me, look at everybody behind us. You know what? We were in pre-kinder and we were in kinder. And guess who taught us to make this high salaries we make it right now? Is that teacher that's struggling today. So that's have to be taken care of. I support 3 schools, 1 in Schertz at the end of the year, and 2 in San Antonio in Judson. One of them is the brand new high school. At the end of the year, I provide them with breakfast, telling all the teachers and the employees, thank you so much for all you do for our communities and our kids. But what most interesting is when I was visiting the new high school, not that I'm just going to mention 2 names because that was mentioned to me. And we talked about school board members, et cetera, and of course in the highlights with the news, and we all know what transpired in the news is shameful, to be clear, but you know, the law have to take its course. They spoke very highly, some people out of the Judson School District, about 2 of our members. One of them is Mr. Guru, which is I know, and I've talked to him during his service with our Schertz Police Department. They spoke very highly of him and the incredible job they believe he's doing in our school, and I thank them for that. And I know Mr. John Guru. The other one is Mr. Ed Finley. I've never met Mr. Ed Finley in person, or really actually, but thank you. They think highly of you, and they give me a lot of examples. I could go through all of them. That I'm not saying that they're not talking highly of you, but this is the two name that was mentioned to me, and I said I will bring it forward. Now, that's being said, we don't look good in the public eye. We don't. The school district, and it's very disturbing and it's very alarming. You know, we all make mistakes, but we have to own up to it. There is a consequence, you know, and I hope that after all this said and done, the board member in question get his life put together, but there is a consequence today. You know, and people look at us as this is a school board, and oh my God, and it keep coming up over and over and over. Now, mind you, I think I understand this, but I'm not clear of it. I know no one up here have the power to remove anyone from the seat because they are elected official. But sometimes integrity have to step in and say, let's move forward. So I'm hoping and I'm praying that, you know, the individual in question will have that and move forward. Let the school district move forward. You know, it's really not good. You know, I've heard even in our own businesses, from rentals to restaurant, and they say, oh my God, did you hear this, Mr. Grumby? High school kids. High school kids. They said, I wish you would have won. No, I don't. I don't have, by the way, an ambition to run again. I'm done. But the question that come to me, and I never said anything derogatory regarding anyone when this subject came up. But I think the board and Mr. Gibson have to encourage this individual, look, we need to move forward. I sure thank you so much.
Mr. Benson?
Good evening. Tonight I want to address just present a couple of questions to you. Obviously, based on the agenda, there's some discussions going to happen behind closed doors about some personal conduct. And I wanted to talk about this a bit, just for a minute. In January, we were repeatedly told at the 23rd January meeting that this was nothing to do with anything but personal business. So I want to talk about this and accountability and talk about this in regard to a board policy of yours, which is your ethics policy, BBF, local. In that policy, and in the last meeting, we were kind of told that, you know, we could separate different things as far as this behavior on the board's been just perfect. So the rest of that's not a big deal. So I wanted to read what your board policy says about ethics. In the first paragraph, as a member of the board, I shall promote the best interests of the district as a whole. Has that been going on? Honor and conduct, I will tell the truth. Has that been going on? Student-centered focus, I appreciate that was read tonight. I will be continuously guided by what is best for all students of the district. Is that what's been going on? Do we have an ethics policy that we just have on writing, but we don't really intend to actually follow it or use it to take care of things that are not ethical going on in our organization? Why have a policy on ethics if we're not going to enforce it? What's the point of following some policies and not others? We were told in January nothing can be done. Board policy doesn't say anything. Now here we are in June, and we're talking about changing the board policy to do something. In January, was there less information? Did we have less known? So my question really is tonight is this: why now? You know, in all fairness, nothing's really changed. So why now? Is it because you're trying to pass a TRE and a bond issue and this doesn't look good? Why now? What has changed? Nothing is the answer to the question. You knew in January that he had lost his law license. State Bar had removed that. You knew, or could have known in January, that he was also being summoned to court for a similar matter and was avoiding being served notice at the very meeting that I got full-throated apologies for him. I want to know what's changed, and you need to ask yourself, why now? What's changed? Short of those questions, I do have one other. When this is all resolved and before any TRE or any bond should be even looked at or approved, I would recommend a forensic accounting of this entire district. It is very clear that somebody who's been here for 20 years does not understand a fiduciary or just an ethical understanding of how you deal with other people's money. And I think before you get any more taxpayer money, you ought to be able to account for every penny over the last 20 years. Because short of that, we don't really know. Thank you.
Dr. Petrisky.
Good evening, President Westbrook, members of the board, Dr. Gibson. I've been a homeowner for 31 years in the district. The team of 8 definitely needs to do so much to restore confidence and integrity in this district. As I said before, it's the students that make this district look good. They actually earn the awards that are presented. They don't buy them. I'm very upset that it takes entanglements at the state level, at the county level, at the local level, before anything is done. I'm upset that only one board member wanted to address these issues before they got out of hand and besmirched the reputation that the students and the teachers work so hard. Thank you, Mr. Coreau, for being that courageous person, board member. I was especially astounded when this board member wanted to address the issue that a majority of the board was doing a slam against this board member. Right now, the team of 8 is sending definite mixed messages regarding the standards of conduct and behavior expectations. In addition, you're also sending mixed messages about the financial health of this school district. As a taxpayer for 31 years, right now in particular, the first time ever that the school district wants to initiate a tax ratification election. As my experience as an administrator in education, the only time a TRE is ever used is because your fund balance has taken a major hit, or your fund balance is about to take a major hit. In February of 2018, during the workshop, it was said that for the upcoming school year, 2018-19, a budget could be handled at the $4 rate. That would be inclusive of giving teachers a salary increase. Then, teachers are being told, you're not going to get a salary increase after all. Students are being told, and last month's board meeting, there was a big to-do about student programs being cut. The teachers and the students are now being made to pay for the mistakes and the decisions made by the team of 8. You have things on the agenda that you talk about the budget, and yet you're requesting central office positions at 6-figure salaries. You tried this back in April, and people were not very happy about that. April, that was the month that the citizens received their property tax appraisals which had skyrocketed. You had a board member at that workshop in February who spelled it out and gave bulletin items. Thank you, Ed Finley, for doing so. He actually did his homework about the perfect storm that was about to come down and that everybody needed to tighten their belts. Well, you know what? At the campus level, the teachers are tightening their belts. Central office administration is not. And I asked, you know, board operations, one of the things that you need to include on that, board members, you need to know the board packet agendas like the back of your hand. Some of you don't even read, and you take pride in saying, I haven't read that, or the day of. You're looking at a board packet. There's millions of dollars we're talking about, and yet you authorize $1.5 million for certain programs that you really haven't discussed. So I ask, recommend no TRE at all, because as the gentleman said before me, you have much work to do at the level Team 8. Thank you.
Amber O'Neill.
Thank you. Dr. Gibson, President Westbrook, and Board, I stand before you today just as I did in January, requesting Mr. Inman's resignation. Sadly, the behavior and actions of Mr. Inman are clearly outside of the SCUCISD belief statements, mission, and values. Those very belief statements you take the time to read before every meeting. Again, actions speak louder than words. Why do we have belief statements if we're not going to adhere to them? Should Mr. Inman choose not to resign, I ask each of the board members to request his resignation. I have personally emailed each of you, including Mr. Inman himself, requesting resignation. And sadly, to my knowledge, the only board member with courage to take such action is Mr. Carew. I understand what I'm asking is not easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it. I've been ridiculed, bullied, and accused of dragging the district through the mud. Despite all of that, I stand before you again today and ask for Mr. Inman's resignation. Mr. Inman is solely responsible for his actions and the negative attention brought upon the district. How can I, or anyone else for that matter, be faulted, ridiculed, or bullied for requesting elected officials be held accountable for their actions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Now we will have a board discussion and possible action. Revisions to the Church-Cibolo Universal City Independent School District Board Operating Procedures presented by Robert Westbrook and Dr. Gibson. Are you ready? Yep.
So trustees, you have before you edits to our board operating procedures, which we historically review annually, but they can be revised at any time. These are the same recommendations that the board reviewed at our last called meeting last week, with only minor cleanups.
Can I get a motion?
I move the Board of Trustees approve the revised board operating procedures as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. The board will now adjourn into closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Section 551.074, authorization to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or to hear a complaint or charge against an officer or employee. 551.071, consultation with attorney on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with this chapter. In deliberation regarding matters related to the duties and conduct of trustee Gary Inman and regarding possible discipline of same through motion and or proposed resolution of censure, Texas Government Code 551.074. Time is now 6:30. Stand adjourned into closed session. We're now re-adjourned. It is 6:41. Now we have discussion pertaining to personnel matters per Texas Government Code 551.074, deliberation on the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or to hear a complaint or charge against an officer or employee. Deliberation regarding matters related to the duties and conduct of trustee Gary Inman and regarding possible discipline of same through motion and or proposed resolution of censure. Do I have a motion?
I motion as a result of his failure to conduct himself in accordance with the ethical standards expected of the members of the Board of Trustees of Schertz-Cibolo Universal City ISD, including matters related to his pending felony charges and indictment. I move that the board publicly censor trustee Gary Inman and authorize the board president and board secretary to sign the following resolution of censure on behalf of the board. On the 19th day of June 2018, the Board of Trustees of the Schertz-Cibolo Universal City Independent School District adopted by vote the following findings and resolution. Whereas through Board Policy BBF Local, the Board of Trustees collectively and members of the board individually have agreed to take no private action that may compromise a trustee's performance or responsibilities. And whereas Board Policy BBF Local further states that trustees will be continuously guided by what is best for all students of the district. And whereas Mr. Gary Inman, a member of the Schertz-Cibolo Universal City Independent School District Board of Trustees, has recently been indicted on felony charges. And whereas Mr. Inman's private legal matters have received media coverage and public attention. And whereas Mr. Inman's personal matters have become a distraction to the board and interfere with the district's effort to run efficient and effective board meetings. And whereas the criminal allegations, if true, demonstrate that Mr. Inman has failed to act in accordance with the standards expected of members of the Board of Trustees of the Schertz-Cibolo Universal City Independent School District. Most importantly, his private actions and personal matters have adversely impacted not only Mr. Inman's effectiveness as a trustee, but have also undermined the orderly governance of the district, staff morale, and the reputation of the district among parents and members of the community. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Schertz-Cibolo Universal City Independent School District does hereby publicly censure Board Member Gary Inman. The censure is one of the only options available to the Board to reprimand Mr. Inman and to make clear for the record that the Board does not condone his actions. The Board would like the public and district employees to know that any potential criminal actions that may have been engaged by Mr. Inman as presented in the criminal indictment were taken as an individual and do not represent the standards of conduct that the Board of Trustees expects of its district officials. Further, Trustee Gary Inman is expected to strictly conform his conduct to the ethical standards set forth in the district's board policy BBF Local, signed this 19th day of June 2018.
Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Prior to any discussion, Gary Inman did have a statement that he wanted read. He wanted to have read in open session, so I'll read it as follows. I have all the faith and trust in the world in my fellow Schertz-Cibolo Universal City Independent School District trustees, and will certainly honor and respect whatever decision the board makes tonight with respect to my possible censure. Please know that I have dutifully served and given my heart and soul to this district for almost 20 years and have been a part of this community for almost 40. I truly regret that Schertz-Cibolo Universal City has been in any way affected by those recent issues, which are solely personal in nature and do not directly involve Schertz-Cibolo Universal City Independent School District or my service as a trustee. I intend to address these issues honestly and directly and trust that they will be resolved soon and in the appropriate manner. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the resolution, raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Next, I would like to make a personal public statement from the board and from myself. So, the Schertz-Cibolo Universal City Independent School District Board of Trustees is collectively troubled by the allegations brought forth against fellow member Mr. Gary Inman. Although he deserves the right to a presumption of innocence and due process, the seriousness of the charges has cast a negative light on our district and our Board of Trustees. State law limits the actions a school board can take under these circumstances. This evening's censure is the strongest possible action we are allowed. and the Short-Cibolo Universal City Independent School District Board of Trustees felt it necessary to do so to let our community and employees know that the allegations brought forth against Mr. Inman reflect neither the board's standard of conduct nor the district's mission, vision, values, and belief statements. Tonight's action is regrettable, but necessary. We will continue our efforts of open and frank communication with our constituents in a spirit of trust and transparency. Together, the Board of Trustees will renew our commitment to provide the high standards of leadership the community deserves. Thank you. Let's go into board recess, 6:46. We'll reconvene at 7 o'clock. The board is now back in session. The time is 7 o'clock. Is there any correspondence? No correspondence. Now we will have new business discussion item, employee compensation package, school year 2018-2019, presented by Linda Cannon.
Yes, President Westbrook, Dr. Gibson, and members of the board. The compensation package is designed and administered for the purpose of attracting and retaining qualified employees. The package includes wage and salary structure, stipends, and incentives and benefits. Tonight, this is a discussion item only, and we will be bringing this back for approval in either July or August. But I did want to share with you some of the changes to that tonight, which is on our stipends. There is some requests for additional stipends at the mainly at the junior high and high school, and along with that, some for athletics and some growth in the athletics areas. And then also there's the stipend request for webmasters for the campuses to help us with the web pages as we start up the new school year. So I wanted to share that information with you as well.
Any questions? Nope.
So the question is just to get our entire stipend list emailed out to the board?
Not necessarily the entire, since these are modifications, just what the original.
You know, that would
The
be a good way to
original
do
amount.
it, though, to just show you what we currently do and then compare that to this. That
We
would
do
be
that
good.
when we bring the compensation, but I can do that prior to as well to
So
let
we
you
ju-
know.
We're gonna put a board update out later this week. It exists, so it's just a matter of sticking it in the
Correct.
thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Mhm.
That's a good way to lay them out and look at what the difference is.
Aren't most of these new
Mo-
compensation?
Most of them
Sure.
are an additional stipend or a newest stipend that we are requesting because of growth
Right,
in the
okay.
programs. There is a few increases in there, and that's based on the market,
Mm-hmm.
or, for instance, the soccer was an increase because the season has now extended into a regular season, where before when we started soccer, it was a very short
For
season.
the junior highs?
For the junior highs, yes.
Okay.
No other questions? And we have a discussion item by Texas Education Agency application for foreign exchange student waiver, school year 2017-2018, presented by Dr. Edwards.
Yes, thank you. We're bringing to you this evening a discussion item. Basically, this is a waiver that we've taken advantage of for at least the last 6 years. It runs on a 3-year cycle, and this is the first year of the next 3-year cycle. It allows us to limit the number of foreign exchange students to no more than, or no fewer than 5 per year. What we've done in the past is allowed 6 students in the foreign exchange program at each of our comprehensive high schools. So we're bringing it to the board as a discussion item for action in July to then be able to complete the waiver through TEA to allow us that exemption.
Any discussion?
Could you just explain it to me, because I don't understand this. Is this just for the district itself? I guess the question, to be more specific, is hypothetically, I'm a family and I have a foreign exchange student come live with me for the year, and they attend high school. Is that one of the 6 that you're referring to?
Yes, sir.
What happens, just hypothetically, 7 families have foreign exchange students to the 7th kid?
Well, typically, we have this set so that foreign exchange students aren't accepted unless they are able to enroll under that situation. So it's not like they show up and then we tell them no. They work with the program to ensure that that doesn't go over that amount. I think we're running about 5 at each high school right now, so there would be room for the possibility of one more. But we work well in advance before the students actually show up, so they don't show up and they're not able to do that. That's why it's important to get the policy set early, and that's why it's also important that it runs on a 3-year cycle so we know what our enrollment is, and we can, the agencies can check with us to see how many slots we might have left.
Got it. I didn't know they did that, so.
Any more discussion? Nope. Discussion, Communities in Schools contract for school year 2018-2019, presented by Ms. Gracia.
Good evening, President Westbrook, Dr. Gibson, and members of the board. Tonight, we're submitting our annual contract for communities and schools. Currently, we have 11 site coordinators who partner with educators, parents, and students to help identify the needs and support our at-risk students.
Any discussion or comments? You're on the board, right, Jerry?
Are there any significant changes from last year?
The price per site coordinator has gone up, and that total now is $381,370. It went up about $1,100 per site coordinator.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Discussion hazardous routing for school year 2018-2019. Francisco Perez. Or did I? Discussion 2018-2019 Student Code of Conduct presented by Michelle Shea. That's because I was a very bad student, so I'm trying to skip over that. I don't believe in good conduct, so.
I'll be presenting on Michelle Chea's behalf in regards to the 2018-2019 Parent-Student Code of Conduct. It remains with no changes, and no updates or revisions have been provided by the state at this time. And if we have any based on the TASB model, we will be bringing that forth to you all again, but we plan to bring that as an action item in July.
Any discussion?
I might add that on the year prior to a legislative session, which is 2 years after the previous legislative session, there's typically not that many changes. A year from now, you can expect that's the one that usually has the changes.
Thank you very much. I will say that I received a comment one time about the sort of the expectation of being equally applied and what students expected and what the superintendent and the administrators of each school expected. Some people basically thought that there was sort of like the rules are willy-nilly. I know how that sounds, but when somebody comes to you and says, well, they're not always applied equally, I don't know, what would you even comment to that? What do you say?
Based on the policy, we always have to consider it as administrators is looking at the intent of the discipline action and also given history of the student. So there are several factors that go into it when you're looking at a discipline case. So maybe that's the perception that it's willy-nilly because it isn't black and white. Based on the policy, it says to look at the intent, look at the history of the student. So we take all that into account.
I've heard phones. Some people take them up, some people don't. I don't know.
The age is the other factor to take in consideration when you're looking at those, and the intent, the age of the student, and several things. We routinely go through these, especially with our assistant principals during PLCs and things like that, to try to ensure fidelity in the process, especially by level. That's one of the things that we need to remain consistent on. So what we're seeing at the elementary levels, intermediate levels, but there is an expectation that we follow the student code of conduct. Some situations can be two students involved in the same thing. However, there's a history of a student that may have multiple infractions prior to that. This student may be first infraction. So you weigh all of those things in. That can lead to that perception, but it is fluid and consistent. And when it's not, we try to address those either with the individual campus if we need to, or in a situation to where we do more of a training exercise and some pieces in there. And we already have some of those planned.
Thank you very much.
Well, and I also think some people think the code of conduct covers everything, but a lot of that stuff is in our student handbooks as well. Am I correct? Like at the high school level. So some of that, I know we have our code of conduct, but then we also have our student handbook as well. Right,
and the code of conduct is basically an extension of our board policy. We just had that conversation today in our 10 hours with Abby. So we try to remain consistent, ensure fluidity between the policy down to the student code of conduct, down to the specific actions that are taking place on campuses, and address those as they need to be addressed, whether in a large group or individually.
Thank you. And if you knew what willy-nilly meant, you're old, including me. So. Yes, sir. John?
Hold on, I was Googling it.
Yeah, I'm old.
and I might have missed it, you might have said it, and I know there's no changes this year because there was no legislative changes or anything. Do we periodically, during that time of no change, do we review, or is there a committee, or is there some type of a platform where people get together and say, hey, let's just go page by page, this one needs to be added or changed or whatever?
We've established a discipline committee, a student code of conduct committee, that one of their charges, their responsibilities is to look at that. And so it's key members, assistant principals, in work in our DAP principal as well, and because they deal with a lot of discipline. So, so there's key players involved that are constantly reviewing and looking at that to provide the consistency and just opportunities for improvement.
One of the key things in there is they also know who the representatives are. So as an assistant principal, I may not be on that committee, but I'm going to go to Veronica, who's one of my colleagues as an assistant principal. So throughout the year, we're also supplying information. Hey, we may need to address this. We may need to look into this. This is a question that has come up. So that's a part of that process as well.
Well, I think one of the things to consider too is the age of the students as far as how things are administered. You know, in high school, as the students get a little older, you know, and with 150 to 200 teachers, that's a wide variety of what you're willing to put up with and not put up with. Some are going to be more strict, some are going to be less. Subject matter is taken in. And there's a lot of things that you just can't be black and white in this situation. Some people are going to deal with it differently. So if that's willy-nilly, then that's what it is. I didn't have to Google it. So you know.
I just Googled it. Now I know what it is. I just Googled
I don't
it.
even think Google has it listed.
Thank you very much. Hazardous routing for school year 2018-2019 presented by Francisco Perez.
Good evening, President Westbrook and Dr. Gibson, members of the board. This is a discussion item that will be brought for action next month. It is regarding the CNA local policy for student transportation. The board must annually adopt a resolution to identify hazardous conditions that students residing within 2 miles of the school will encounter if they walk to school. For the 18-19 school year, we're adding 2 routes to the list that you see there on your packet. And that's mainly to address the attendance zone for Rose Garden, basically right across 1518. Besides that, there's no changes to the criteria that we use for the 18-19 school year. And also this year, we're able to meet with Schertz PD and Cibolo PD and go through the routes and just talk through some of the challenges that we've seen and see if they had any other input for that.
Any discussion, questions? What were some of the challenges for the routes after Tones?
Just making sure that we validate, make sure that they know the areas that we see as hazardous. Some are pretty obvious, 3009, 1103, parts of 1518, 78. And then they were able to share with us some of the traffic conditions in other areas within the district. And we ran that through our criteria. In some cases, we already had identified those areas, but in others, we were able to add them to the list.
Thank you. Any cost or extra
sir,
personnel?
No, this is, of course, is something that it has to be done for funding. We do anticipate for this past school year to receive approximately $70,000 from the state because we're able to identify those areas as hazardous.
Yes, sir. John?
No, I was just going to add a comment. There's probably 2 or 3 organizations within the school district that we get, probably, or at least I do, and I'm sure they do too, get most of their complaints about, and transportation's always one of them. And I don't think the average person knows how much work y'all put into what y'all do, looking at the hazardous routes and how much effort goes into it. And of course, they just hear what their kid came home and said, and I know there's been a couple times of that. And so I just want to say I appreciate all y'all's effort that y'all really take, making sure that the routes, are the right routes. And I know y'all made some modifications on where y'all stop based on, not necessarily complaints, but concerns brought by citizens. And I know y'all really put a lot of effort in that, so I want to say I appreciate it. And most of all, it's because 2 of my kids don't know it yet, but they're getting ready to ride the school bus this year. So thank y'all, and thank y'all, and good luck. And I'll make sure they read the code of conduct.
Thank you. That's absolutely a team effort, and I will say, obviously, office staff and our drivers, they do a great job. So,
Just rest assured they're better behaved than John is, so it's okay. It'll be okay. Is Schertz Parkway, is that a hazardous route for students living on either side, either going to Wilder or going to Pascal?
no, sir, it's not.
It's not?
No.
Okay. Is that because of their crossing guards or?
They have crossing guard and also sidewalks.
Okay.
Also, the speed limit is
Yeah.
lower than others.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you for everything you do. I appreciate that. This is one of the reasons why I think a lot of parents bring their children out here is because they know they're going to be taken care of from the day they start the school day until they get home, and this is one of the reasons why. Want to ask, how is the new routes going to be communicated to the parents? Because then now all of a sudden they're going to change this, so how they're going to know that their children are now going to be eligible for bus service that may not have been before?
So there are a number of different ways, and normally that process starts late July when we have the rollover from ITEX. Online, where we send an email blast. We actually send, we call them rider ID cards home with the bus stop location, bus information, and so, you know, again, and we've done also voice messages. And so a lot of that is directing folks to the online service that we have, but they do get a rider ID card. Now, if brand new students, when they go to the campus, they do get that information from the school. And of course, if they have any questions, they can give us a call.
Yeah, I get asked that question every so often. It says, how do I know if my children can get a bus drive? So I want to make sure that the information is being put out there, and also how would they find out. So that's helpful.
Yes, there's an online tool for that.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Okay. I will know what to do then. Thank you.
Nothing more, thank you. Procurement of goods and services presented by Matt Rivera.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, and Dr. Gibson. As was mentioned tonight earlier, the month of June is typically light. We only have 2 solicitations. And I'll begin with our first solicitation. That's with Mr. Mosley. It's one of his projects.
Good evening. Our first solicitation is for portable moving service. This is a service that we use on average about 6 times a year, or 4 or 6 portables per year in the last 5 years. And this is just moving portables from one campus to another. We're currently involved in moving 4 portables from Clemens to other campuses this summer. So contract's coming to an end, so we're going back out to make sure we were getting the best deal that we can on these services.
Any discussion on portables? Nope. Solicitation, request for proposal, is that Mr. Pruski?
Yes, this is for the Clemens High School renovation and addition, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Moving forward, this for the areas including the auditorium and the renovated interior work in the admin and support spaces with special ed and the teacher support areas as well.
Would this be new furniture and replacement furniture, or is it just new furniture?
It's all new. Yes, sir.
It's all new, but
All
I mean,
new.
does it replace other furniture, or is it just,
Yes, it is replacing some, but it's also for the new spaces. It needs to
Right.
be
Okay.
outfitted as well. If you recall that interior work that's being done
Right.
in there for a new nurses clinic, the ALE room, support spaces, the teacher bullpen area it's a big teacher
Right.
workspace, and then for the auditorium, that's all going to be new in there.
Wayne, is this stuff that is not August 1st? Or no,
No, ma'am.
after? It's some of
No,
the
ma'am.
second phase work, basically?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The interior
Yeah.
workout and all of that, we're
Yeah.
looking at January.
Yeah, and I knew auditorium wasn't right away.
Auditorium's November, December
Yeah.
timeframe.
Yeah, our apologies. We accidentally put July as a projected board month for action. It probably won't be until November time period. October, November for those particular solicitations.
Any other discussion? JD, the 4 portables, where are they going? From Clemens to,
We've got one going to Sipple, one going to Corbett, and one going to Cibolo Valley. And then we've also got the small building going behind the softball field over here at Shelton.
okay. Those are the only 4?
Currently, yes, sir.
Thank you. Other discussion? Agenda items requiring board action are routinely brought to the Board of Trustees for discussion 1 month and brought back to the board for consideration and possible action at a later date, typically the following month. This item allows trustees an opportunity to consider which discussion items on this month's agenda may be eligible for board action under the consent agenda of a future meeting. Any item placed under the consent agenda may be pulled and voted on separately if requested by a board member. Is there any consideration, or I can discuss, or I can list what's going to be for the action items next month? Employee compensation package, or you want to go over?
Well,
Dr. Gibson?
they're listed on page 35. That's all I was going to say.
Okay.
I would think with the question about the employee compensation that we not put it in consent, and so that we can close out those last few questions. If that's okay. All right.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
going to ask that.
All right. The foreign exchange. Everybody okay? Communities and schools.
Yes.
Okay.
Code of conduct.
Yeah.
Hazardous routing.
Yes.
And portable. And then the Clemens is not applicable to this because it's going to be in November anyway. Yeah,
Right.
so will you bring it back as a refresher when we get closer to it? Okay, it'll come back as a refresher when we get closer to it. So I'm going to put NA on that one. Okay. So it's a no on the first one and an NA on the last one and yes on everything else. Does that sound right?
Yes. Next, we will have Dr. Gibson, consent items. Any board member may inquire about the consent agenda items by addressing concerns to the superintendent prior to the meeting. When questions or concerns are not answered to the board member's satisfaction, he or she may request that the superintendent pull the items for additional discussion during the board meeting. All consent agenda items not pulled shall be approved without discussion during the board meeting. Does any trustee want to pull A, B, C, or D from the consent agenda for further discussion? You want? Go ahead.
It lists new positions, but those are the cafeteria workers that are out of the cafeteria, the federal budget. So I know that can be deceiving when somebody might look at the agenda, but when you
Right,
look
as
at that.
laid out last month, it's 2 frontline child nutrition workers.
Yeah, which comes out of actually federal.
Well, it's through her enterprise fund, so
Yes,
it doesn't
yeah.
hit it's through,
Yes.
not her, it's through the district's enterprise
Yeah.
fund.
I'm sorry,
that's
yeah.
Child nutrition enterprise.
Yeah.
No, Maggie is not doing that herself.
And the total of 45,830 is for both positions, not 45 each, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And at present, those are the only 2 new positions that we're looking at, correct?
Correct. The only other possibilities, and I hate to be vague, but we have an item later, are some additional frontline staff, potentially related to safety and security.
Okay.
And that would be brought back to the board later in the summer.
Nobody wants to pull anything? All right. Can I have a motion?
Oh, we were trying to.
Hold on, I gotta get back
uh,
one. I move the Board of Trustees approve the consent agenda as presented. A, approval of minutes. B, approval of financial statements. C, acceptance of superintendent's report on budgeted purchase of goods and services in excess of $50,000. And D, new positions for the 2018-2019 school year.
I second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Other action items, request for board action, leadership TASB class of 2019 applications presented by Robert Westbrook.
It's on page 70. That's,
So, leadership TASB is open to all school board trustees who have completed one of the following: a minimum of 36 hours of documented board member continuing education, a minimum of 30 hours of board member continuing education, which includes all core TASB independent school district classes. Applicants must also show evidence of demonstrated leadership ability on their local school board and in their community, and must be able to commit to and attend sessions on the designated dates for the program year. Church-Cibolo Universal City Independent School District has historically supported board member participation in this program. I believe our most distinguished graduate from Church-Cibolo Universal City has been Scott Harrod, and even when you go to any TASB events, all of his classmates and many more still remember the importance that Scott Harrod had with Texas Association of School Boards and a role he played, you know, in Church-Cibolo Universal City Independent School District. Other members have been myself and, was it Ricks, or was it, I think there was one more. Yes, it was Gary. Also as part of the leadership TASB. It's an influential program. It's well known throughout the state of Texas. You will visit large districts, small districts, poor districts, rich districts, 5 different places throughout the year. And I think more importantly is you're gonna get to know other school board members and sort of act as your own sort of learning community and bring stuff back and how to improve the district itself. And I think for this year we have John Carew. John Carew and Amy Dreisbeck. John, you want to have any words, or you? No.
Yeah, if y'all remember, I was physically at Leadership TASB the first night, waiting to start the next morning when I get a phone call and I end up having to go to Puerto Rico.
Yep.
So hopefully it doesn't have a big hurricane this year again,
Yes.
or at least not that weekend. But yeah, so I actually got pulled away the first night and had to go, so.
Amy?
Well, I was just going to say, we're hoping that we'll be both selected, because it's a selection process, that they're just going to carry over John's selection from last year and then appoint another one. If not, we definitely want John to be able to do his this year. So I'm looking forward to just learning more from other board members around the state, visiting different school districts. It's from West Texas to the Panhandle to South Texas that we'll visit, so.
Just to expand on that, for those who've never had the opportunity to go to one of these TASB events, when you sit at the table from someone from, and I don't want to call it a school district, but a very wealthy school district, and then you talk to another person at the table, and how many kids do y'all have? Well, our graduating class was 32. And you're like, we have 32 in a portable out here. But you listen to the differences, but it's funny because they all have a lot of the same problems no matter where they're at, and everybody has money problems, everybody has,
Funding.
you know, student problems and everything, but it's interesting, and you do learn a lot, and it's fun even going to the regular TASB events.
Good luck to both of y'all. I'm trying to tell you, Church-Cibolo does have a positive reputation, despite today's actions from our board member, Dr. Gibson especially, and the presentations on good governance. And so I'm excited about both of y'all attending Leadership TASB. We'll think positive.
I'm thinking positive. Hopefully we're going to get.
I think we're going to have to go back into closed session. One more thing. And also there's a request for board action revised budget param. Oh, I got it. Can I get a motion?
Mr. President, I move the Board of Trustees approve John Carew and Amy Dreisbeck to submit the Leadership TASB to submit the Leadership TASB Class of 2019 application and acknowledge that funds are available for this expenditure if accepted for enrollment.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Next, a request for board action, revised school year 2018-2019 budget parameter memo requested by Paige Maloney.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, Dr. Gibson, members of the board. Three things that we need to look at this evening. Number one, when we passed the original budget parameter memo in April, it did reflect an early adoption rate, tax rate method of doing that election in August, and we know now that we are not doing that. Something else that has come up, and you can see in version A, in red, in light of certain safety events that have gone on, the district is wishing to amend the current interlocal agreements with City of Schertz and City of Cibolo to add 2 additional SRO officers, 1 on each side of the district. There is a possibility of a legislative session to consider Governor Abbott's safety plan, and that plan does call for coordination between the school districts and local law enforcement. So we are very much trying to align our plans with that plan. There are some things that are promising that there could be some funding available for that. We also did receive our Title IV entitlement, which was, we expected 0, and we actually got $63,000 that goes to our neediest campuses, and so our Director of Counseling is working on a social emotional learning piece for the Schertz Wilder track up to Corbett, because we do have to serve those Title I campuses with that. So that's all going to be in correlation with that, and I think it's nicely aligned. The last thing, we are bringing through 4 different scenarios of the budget parameter memo tonight, but what I would like to say is we are balancing the budget on $1.04. The rest of the scenarios for a one-time payment and for a possible tax ratification election are for administrative implications for our planning purposes. We will have to set the proposed tax rate in July, and so we kind of need a direction on where to go with that. And then we'll be bringing back compensation in July, and that language, if we were to do a one-time payout, would be in that scenario. But I think the thing that what we want to say is we will balance on $1.04, and we've talked about before, if we were to go forward with the tax ratification election, the remaining funds, we would put those in a special category, if you will, and would not expend them until the voters passed that election. So basically we're asking for some direction tonight for getting what we need to get in the paper, bringing the proposed tax rate to you in July to prepare for adopting the budget in August.
When does the notice have to be put in the paper?
After we adopt the proposed tax rate, 15 days before we go to the.
Okay, so when, like, make that into a date for me. A projected date.
Projected date, it would be second week of August, yeah, 15 days prior to that last week in August. I can get it to you, yeah.
So August 30th would be the date we set the tax rate, right?
Well, no, we would have to approve a proposed tax rate
Right.
in July,
Okay.
so it can go into the paper. I mean, if we need to bring 2 items back.
But I mean, that's
one-
the proposal. The actual
Yeah,
date
the
for
actual
voting
date
on it is
is-
August
yes.
30th, right? So
Okay, the
that would be
July
15 days. You would have that 15 days prior to August 30th.
Exactly.
Okay.
So my question was, you answered with his question, it's the July. That's what I was getting at.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the 4 scenarios reflect $1.06 and a one-time payment, $1.06 and no one-time payment, $1.04 one-time payment, $1.04 no one-time payment.
And on the one-time payments, we're just right now on these authorizing that that's a possibility on the
Yes.
one-time payment.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Because we haven't
wouldn't-
even discussed what kind of percentage that one, or how that one, well, we did. I mean, we have different scenarios in
I
here.
actually put-
2%.
I did put that
Okay,
in
2%,
all
1%, and
4
then a flat rate.
scenarios.
Okay. The cost.
I put it in the scenarios that include the one-time payment, so that would be, actually, it's in all 4.
And on the $4 rate, would we have to pull for the one-time payment, one-time pay rate or payout? would we have to pull from the fund balance, or would that be written into the,
We could write it into compensation to either pull out of, it would, I mean, on $1.04 current with the numbers that we have, we could not do that. We would have to pull it out of fund balance. But there's also language.
Unless 1,000 more kids.
Well, that's
come.
what I was gonna say,
Yeah.
and let, you know, if we got more kids,
right, we get more money from
there's
the
a
state.
possibility through savings, and yes.
But
Okay.
and we've, just a reminder on that note, we've built the budget really tight with fewer fast growth positions. And so if those kids come, we're probably going to have to come back to the board to ask for additional staff members before we consider this. We would have to get that balanced out before we would consider this.
So you-
I'm going to ask a question. I've missed a board meeting this year. Probably the first one I've missed in a long time. Has there been a board meeting where we've stated or discussed that we're not going to give staff members a salary increase?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
I know that there was a discussion about that there was a possibility. But has anybody ever stated that we weren't?
The previous.
Flat fact that we weren't?
The previous budget parameter memo said one-time staff payment only, right?
Right, but that's still, that's a salary increase, basically. I mean, it is a payoff, right, a payout.
It doesn't go into the scales.
No, I know that,
right.
but it is salary.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I
Well-
just want to make sure that I
Yeah.
didn't miss something, because I heard that we had said there wasn't going to be a salary increase. Yes, I know it's not an ongoing thing. It's not a.
Right.
It's not something that's going to affect TRS or any of that sort of thing, but
Right.
I'm just trying to understand the fact.
Mhm.
And like I said, I missed a meeting. So if that was stated, I've never heard it, but, you know. And I just want to clarify some things here about compensation and salary. I never heard anyone flat say, we're not going to be able to give the teachers a salary increase. I understand there was a possibility that because of the budget parameter, that it was going to be very difficult. But I don't recall anybody ever saying we weren't.
Yeah, one of the factors early on in the budget parameter discussion was the status of the 17-18 budget. And because of us taking action early last September in response to the student growth being less than anticipated, we'll finish the 17-18 budget fine. Is that right?
It's not, you remember that we did take out 5 point whatever, what did we take for the EPP? It's not going to be a hit of 5.8. We're going to have some savings. I can't say that it's going to be, you know, last year we broke even with
Right.
the EPP. I don't know that it's going to be that close, but it's not going to be the 5.6, which is encouraging.
And we didn't know that until just now. So now we know that, so it's a little easier to.
Okay. Like I said, I just want to understand, because I never heard that. But I missed a meeting this year, so.
Yeah, the way it's worded in here is the one-time staff payment equivalent to a percent from general operating fund balance and not added to the pay scales. And I think that's the way we've discussed it for some time.
And we also talked about the flat rate too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there was discussion with the TRE and those things as well.
Well, I just like to keep the facts in the way. So, just saying.
So when you're talking about direction tonight from the board, are we talking about between one or two options, A, B, C, or D, or the percentage, 1%, 2%, or $1,000 to all employees, or?
As far as the compensation for if it's a one-time payment, we just have to put the verbiage in the compensation booklet that the superintendent has the authority to bring to you that option.
So what is A? What is scenario A?
A would be doing it at $1.06, which would trigger the TRE with the one-time payment in the compensation booklet.
Okay, what's B?
Version B would be 106, which would trigger a TRE with no one-time payment in the compensation booklet. Version C is on $1.04 and a one-time payment built into the compensation booklet that the superintendent would have the authority to do that. And then version D is $1.04 and no one-time payment in the compensation booklet for authorization.
And just to clarify, we would not be setting the 2%, 1% or flat rate at this time. We would just be saying the superintendent has the authorization, and it will go in the compensation booklet for the
Right.
employees.
Yeah, and that is because the education code is really clear that you can't just decide in December to do something like that. You have to.
Once the services have started.
The local revenue growth, have we ever fallen below the 7%, assumed 7% growth?
For the
We had it
past,
pretty safe.
we've been pretty much on target. We've been over.
We've been over
But
7%.
we balanced on 5%. Not, last year was 6%, but the years before that, 2 or 3 years, 5%. And we actually, we saw 8% one year, 7%. Looks like it's gonna be about 7% this year too. So that helped as well.
Any other questions?
No, I appreciate Mr. Pivotal clearing that up so we weren't all willy-nilly.
There we go.
Thank you, Ms. Maloney, for
You-
explaining all that too.
You have the information you need or no?
No, we gotta.
No,
You
it's
still need
actually
some more.
posted as an action item. Ideally, this decision would be made
By now.
tonight or by now, so that at the July board meeting, there is a presentation of here is the budget. And then it just starts that triggering of events.
Or we can bring back both proposed tax rates in July.
That's unorthodox, but it can be done. We can't not go past the July meeting.
And then,
So-
no,
And
and
hit our
then
tax
in the
rate.
compensation booklet, we can bring two versions, one with, one
Yes.
without.
And we typically try not to do that at the very last meeting, but we can.
Here's my sort of, at 106, right, triggers a TRE,
Yes, sir.
but we can balance it at 104 and still give the, possible, pay raise of 1 or 2%. 1% is at 900,000 and 2% is 1.8 million.
Well, on the current projections,
the
we
current
can't
projection.
balance the 104 with that,
Yes.
with everything
Go
that's
into
in there.
fund
We would
balance.
have to go into fund balance.
We did go
Or
from-
a lot of kids would have to come in, we would have to hire our
Exactly.
teachers and then still have a little money left over.
Yeah.
It would still be very tight. That would
Yes.
be a definite
Yes.
hardship.
But the trustees had asked us from the very beginning to not make this
Compensation.
consideration of compensation contingent on 4 or 6, and so we didn't. We just built it into either budget.
I don't know where everybody stands, but sort of I've heard criticism about the TRE, so here's how I sort of see it. We're running, sooner or later, we're gonna hit the wall, and I think I've heard 2 years or 3 years from now. Sooner or later, you're gonna hit the wall. So do you fill up your gas tank before you run out of gas, or do you get the gas, or do you try to get a little bit more out of the engine and wind up hitting the wall? We don't know what's gonna happen 2 or 3 years from now. Public sentiment may be worse, may be better. But if we don't do the TRE this year, when are we gonna do it? When is time ever gonna be better? When does anybody ever want their taxes raised? Who wants to give up anything?
And if I may, Mr. Westbrook, we started at a consideration of 13 cents. We changed it to 11 cents, and then we changed it to 5 cents, and now we're talking about 2 cents. I just want to, that's how the metamorphosis of this decision based on public
sentiment,
response.
public response.
Yes. And I won't go into the whole golden penny thing, but that's why we settled on those two.
And we had the budget workshop where we looked at salaries and salary comparisons, and we decided that instead of a raise, we, in good graces, we could, this is another option. So.
And then, okay, so since you brought that up, then in addition to that, we formed the board salary and benefits committee to study, so that we do this either way, and then we study where our pay grades are over this next year.
Well, again, it's keeping the spotlight on the facts. The state as much as told us that we're not going to get any more money from them until we push it as far as we can push it with our local taxpayers. And this is it. This is what the TRE is all about. And also, fact is that the 2 pennies, people have the assumption that when they pay their property taxes, that money comes back to the school district, and that's not true. It goes to the state, and then the state divvies it back, and they don't divvy back what the fair share back to the school district. So that's also a fact. The other fact is that the 2 pennies that we're looking at, predominantly the money would come from the state and not the local taxpayers. So yeah, it's another 2 cents, but again,
it yields.
I've heard people say, well, we need to keep this, we need to keep that, we need to do this, we need to do that, but don't ask for 2 more pennies. But you can't do both. I mean, you've got to do something, and yeah, we'll survive on $1.04, but we're not going to be able to do some other things that we might want to do without the 2 pennies, because those 2 pennies are going to make a big difference, and that's not just for this year, that's for next year. And the Austin yield supposedly is going to get a little higher, so that should help a little bit. So
and we said for the duration of the formula, it's forever.
Forever, yes. So it's, again, I understand that, but we lose sight of some things sometimes when we're talking about the TRE. There's so much misinformation out there, and again, there are some folks out there that never let the facts get in the way of their narrative. So that's why I want to try to keep the facts on the table and not get to the emotional part of it. So, sorry. Another willy-nilly.
No.
So I guess more important, the 104 is there. So from the board, who has the argument against 106 on the board?
Well, if you're going to look at both sides of the coin, the 104 we're already at. 106 does add additional taxes to our situation. And like I said, going forward, it's about, what, $4.5 million?
It's right at 4 under current projections.
Okay, right at 4. What proposals exactly are we talking about doing with that additional $4 million? I mean, I know we've gone through it before, but if you would refresh the board's memory as far as what we can't do if we don't go with 106. In other words, what's basically sequestered?
Yeah, so the 2 primary expenditures that were part of what we showed to the board, and y'all let me know the other ones, was assistance with with teachers on response to intervention. I'm just going to use that term. So it's the things that we do prior to special education referral. So it's just more tools in the toolbox assisting teachers with interventions prior to special education referral. So then another component would be to help with special education funding, because we know that's coming. It's going to happen statewide. And then the goal that's been set for me on expansion of career and technology education and the expenses associated with that. So plumbing and HVAC and machine, we just finished with our school to employment to advisory committee, SC committee. They helped us generate this list of not only what the state says, but what our community believes we need to give kids the opportunity to do. And one of the things I want us to do to manage expectations, if we're not able to fund that, I don't want to hang that carrot out there and get a bunch of parents and kids excited about plumbing certifications and HVAC certifications and internships, and all of this if we're not going to be able to deliver it. So you'd have to pull that back. Those were the three. I don't have it in front of me, but that's off the top of my head. Are there any other?
I might add that you kind of touched on this, but basically it's how we serve our at-risk students, from those that just need remediation and intervention to those that are identified with special education, as Dr. Gibson said. Also, a component of that is social emotional learning. We're hearing more and more about that and our needs to increase to help students meet their basic needs or meet their emotional needs in order to put them in a situation to where we can meet their learning needs. And that was a big component of that as well. All of that's wrapped into our at-risk students, but those are some pretty critical areas in that with CTE and as well as providing other extracurricular opportunities for our kids.
There were two other, if I may misspell, there were two other kind of the bigger buckets, my memory's serving me now, that we've historically taken out of EPP, and what we've said is that it's hard to keep doing that out of the fund balance, but you know, some maintenance and facility need. Our roofing schedule was brought up. I think Mr. Crew asked a real good question at one of the budget meetings. What happens if we don't, you know, replace a roof? And you know, we defer it. I remember was the answer. It doesn't get replaced, so you just push it out, push it out, push it out. And then were some technology-related matters that were part of it, just to try to keep up with student and staff devices.
And safety access control was built into there, and then the district-wide.
Right. So those were the things we listed.
CTE modifications, and we can provide, we have the working list. Another thing that'll be tricky in the first year is if it's, you know, it's not approved till November, and if there's the staff that would be tied to it, you know, we're gonna be looking mid-year. So that's when you can look in, like maybe you could knock off that first year, some of those, you know, capital projects, and then plan for the following year. Because as Mr. Pivito said, it gives us that planning latitude for the future years. But we have a working list that we can provide in a board report by function, by, you know, where we would put the money and where we would spend it on.
I know the state was criticized for putting a cap on special education, the numbers. I know we dealt with that when I was working it, you know, that they were, I think it was 9% or something like that. And has that been changed with all that discussion? Has the
Yes, sir. We're definitely feeling the impacts of the new requirements that have been coming down.
Right.
We have more than double the number of students that we've tested last year and again this year. And a significant number of those are qualifying for services, and that could be at any point during the school year.
Yes.
So once they qualify for those services, we have to be ready to serve them the next day. So we are definitely feeling that impact.
Yeah, and I thought that might be the case. And so would this funding also help in that situation with being able to provide further services for these students?
Yeah, I would. So I'm going to just say the answer is yes, because over time we don't know exactly where that's going to wind up.
Right.
I doubt it's going to be less.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, Mr. Pivito, the special education allotment, we're already spending beyond what the state's giving us.
We always have, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like the gifted and talented allotment. We always spent more than.
Yes, sir.
So anyway, thank you.
I think it's safe to say that healthcare is not going to decrease the cost. Recent history shows it going up more than we expected. Safety is going to be an issue, and we're going to put more money into that than we have. Special education, as we just discussed, is going to go up. I don't think we can plan on any decreases. And we've seen across the country that pay has been an issue. We don't have that issue here, but we need to stay ahead of it. And I think those are all things we need to consider.
Mr. Findley, Carew, John. I mean, there's opposition to 106. Let's get it out there now.
I guess the thing I'm hearing is that if we go to 106, the money has already been earmarked to be spent. Would that be a true statement?
Can you say it again? I didn't hear you.
If we go to 106, whatever we would generate, that it sounds like the money's already been earmarked to be spent.
Yeah,
Would that be a true statement?
Yes, and because we can't ask for it unless we've shown the public, you know, what our best
What our needs
estimate.
are. I mean, it goes into our comprehensive needs assessment, and like as Mr. Perkins just said, you know, safety increases, social, emotional, all of those are needs.
I've got all that. What I'm trying to think about is I'm trying to think about the out years. This is, if we do something like this for 1 year, we're gonna cover all of our expenses for that 1 year. Property values are gonna go up next year, and within 2 or 3 years, we will be back here again. Would that be a safe statement?
It could be you know, one of the things that we said earlier in this process is that we take it back down to 2 cents off of the 13 cents. Then we put the board budget committee in place to study what off the future years, you know, so we start looking at what those future year pennies, those other 11 pennies. But initially, we feel a high degree of confidence that this is where these expenditures will go. But I can't tell you that 2 years from now, let's say the TRE passes 2 years from now, we have a bad year, you know, for whatever reason, or the state changes the funding formula, that we're not just balancing the budget, you know, and things are getting cut if the state takes money away. And it could be some of these things because it becomes part of the budget.
Right.
That's the worst case scenario. We would hope that doesn't happen.
We could have an Armageddon in the Texas legislature comes to their senses and decides to do what they're supposed to do and fund us adequately.
Well,
I don't see that happening, but.
I'm just trying to get to the facts, just like you are.
Well, I've tried not to overuse that word tonight. I've used it 4 or 5 times, so I don't want to overdo it.
I realize that we can balance at 104. I know we've done a lot of, how can I say, what's the term that we use when we're doing building? You have a term that you use when we get the best product for our buildings.
Return on investment.
Best value.
And have we done all the things we can do to basically squeeze everything we can out of 104? Is 106 literally the only option?
That's a good question. And, you know, one of the things we're going to do in the board budget committee, again, taking it back from the 13 cents to the 2 cents, is just say, let's go get the state funding, then let's try to answer that question. I do know this, like today we were looking at the state's comptroller rating, if you will, and we probably should make a bigger deal out of that than we do. You know, but we're 4.5 stars out of 5 stars, which means the biggest education, 5 stars, the Comptroller of Texas holds up as the biggest bang for the buck, and we missed by 0.2 something % of being on the list and going to being heralded. So, I mean, we're right on the cusp of one of the districts in the state that gets the best bang for the buck.
That shows the highest progress amongst the students, lowest spending.
For the lowest amount of spending. So, I guess the only way for us to answer that question in objective fashion is to look at things like that and say, according to the comptroller, yes, we're lean. And what's interesting about that, this is really fascinating to me. So none of the campuses are 4-star.
The highest is 3.
And we have highest is 3 out of 5, but the district is almost 5. So what that means is the majority of our funding is at the campus. Like, we've cut so much at central office that almost all of our spending is so much at the campuses that none of our campuses would qualify for the award. Only the district in total.
Their progress is high.
That's because that's how lean the district is. The things that we do for him and him and him.
It just came out.
Okay. If we're providing the best education we can at the school level, wouldn't we get a 5 and not a 3? I mean, if we get the biggest bang for the buck, wouldn't it be the other way around? We would get a 5?
No. So this is about expenditures versus outcome. So it's inputs versus outputs.
Okay.
So what they're saying is that our spending at campuses, they wouldn't say is as low as they would want it to be.
Oh, Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Okay,
But,
okay.
so in other words, we've shifted so many resources to the campuses, we're kind of an anomaly in this system. That pops to mind, we were just looking at that today.
And, I mean, they're compared just at their campus, you know, that's gonna, salaries is gonna, when they're compared against other people, other campuses like them, that's.
And
the
our
way it runs.
retention rate, which is a good thing, probably
Yes.
challenges us in measurements like that because we try to retain staff.
Hey, just to clarify, you said that next month would be the last month that we would have to make a decision.
Correct.
Or move forward. What would be on y'all's part, the ramifications of waiting to July, just if it did go to that, other than 30 days delay?
It's a little
It's
extra work.
administrative,
Yep.
you know, and we are balancing on $1.04.
Sure.
But if we haven't made that decision yet, that we would want to go $1.06, I mean, we have to bring 2 agenda items. We'd have to bring, you know, 2
Sure.
compensation booklets.
Financially or other ways, there's no major impact of waiting to July other than
Just our administrative effort.
just a little bit extra administrative.
Correct.
And it's fine. It's fine. I mean, that is, it's absolutely.
The reason we typically don't do it is because the board said, don't bring all these decisions to us in July. So that's why we backload them. So, but it's for the board's discretion.
Yeah, someone showing up to one meeting might think we just make a decision that night and hadn't talked about it for 3 or 4 months or years. Hate for that to happen.
So,
Well,
just,
sorry.
It's all right.
There is one thing to consider too. We will have the certified agenda certified values by then, correct, or pretty close? I think it's July 15th?
July 25th.
25th.
So when is our July meeting?
It's 24, yeah, it's a day prior.
It's possible.
Well, we'll probably have a pretty good idea by then. They won't be certified, but the appraisal district will know pretty close. So that'll.
And Bear County's had the largest amounts of protests. I mean, we just got notification of that, and that's still going. It'll be to the wire.
That will solidify our growth. It could be 7.5, it could be 8. I mean, 7, I think we're safe. It could be 8. That'll give us some more information at that point in time. So.
We've run our final numbers with students, though, and we have to be pretty conservative on that.
Right. So 30 days will solidify a lot of our numbers.
Good.
Okay.
So what are the reasons that we would delay this to July?
What are the reasons we would delay?
Yeah, why would we not do this tonight?
I think it's a rhetorical question for the board itself. I think there's 2 or 3 members that would, from my general understanding, that would prefer to have this brought up again next month, and then make it yeah, it might be better.
Well, next year might be better, I don't know.
It might be better next month.
I would make that motion if you're asking.
For next month? I mean,
For next month.
I would make them, can I go ahead and make the motion?
Wait, so Dee Dee, it would be, you would just move to postpone or just pull the item? You don't want to table it, just don't table it.
Pull
That's
the item that.
Okay. Do I need to do anything or?
No.
yeah, I don't understand. I mean, why are we not addressing this tonight? That's my question. I mean, I'm not criticizing, I'm just asking why we're not addressing it this evening.
Oh, you asking me one?
No, I'm just, anybody, you know, Ed, you seem to have some concern about it, so that's why, I'm just trying to
I just think
get an understanding as why this is not being acted on tonight.
I think 30 days will solidify a lot of the numbers that we're going to try and make a decision on. One of the things that I prefer to make decisions on is as good an information as we have, and I think 30 days will have the information will be a lot more solid than it is right now. There's still a little bit of speculation as far as what we're going to have, so I think it'll be that, and also our student, we may have a better idea what our students are going to look like coming forward, so we'll have some more final numbers, and we can make a better, granted, we have to final decision at that point in time.
I don't think we'll know what our students are gonna look like in July.
No, the next time we'll look at student counts will be September 1.
Yeah, I think,
Yep.
I think the
And
appraisal.
the appraisal numbers will come in when?
25th.
We're balancing right now on 7%.
Right. Okay, but you think we'll have a number by the time we have the next board
Well,
meeting?
I want to clarify, we have a number. We have.
Well, you have, yeah, I know.
Well, but we're not in the absence of a number, we're just,
Okay.
they've given us the, what do they call it? The
preliminary,
So
right.
we've based it on
And,
the
I mean,
preliminary
Moken-
values. Mr. Finley's right, the final values don't come until the 25th.
Right, and we always balance our budget. I mean, Moken Casey, as soon as they get the final 6 weeks' numbers,
Right.
that's what we run it on, because of
Right.
what has to be posted, everything that has to be moved, you know, all the, that's, you know, okay, so if we go up a estimate of a 0.5 percentage point, I mean, that's, I don't know how much of a difference that's gonna make on growth.
Okay.
Because you're gonna get less state funding.
Well, this is gonna be really weird. If, I don't know that there necessarily has to be a reason tonight. It can just be the comfort level of trustees. Tonight's vote is only on the budget parameter memo. If the trustees did consider, I wanna be real clear about this, we saw this in the newspaper last week with the San Antonio district. On the night of the vote, if you go to 106, it takes 5 votes. So I just want there to be clarity, you know, if they are having to, yes, I don't know if they've done it yet, so, correct. So I just want to point that out, and if you know, if the 30 days helps, you know, there's all, 6 here tonight. 30 days may make that more challenging. I don't know.
Well, I'm sensing reservation from 2, so that's not 5. Do the math. So we just, unless there's 5 for sure, and I'm not, without polling, I'm not just a walking quorum. We have reservations from 2, so we might as well just wait till next month.
I
For
think
sure.
that's a fair way to look at it, and we'll have everything prepared and make sure that if there's anything between now and then, we communicate it in the board updates. Although I just want to be real clear, I don't think there'll be any additional information. I think we have everything tonight, but we're happy to bring it back in 30 days.
So let's move to next month? Yes? That's all we need to do?
Yes.
Paige? Yep.
Yes, now, I mean, we have to bring back the agenda item for the
Just
tax
bring-
rate, so, and compensation.
Yeah.
It won't be in this format, it'll be in decision format.
Right.
Yeah.
So to run through it again, I don't know, that's good that you're being redundant. So there's three things in July.
We would have to bring 2 tax rates, $1.04 proposed tax rate and $1.06
Right.
proposed tax rate. And then on the one-time payment, if we were going to do that, we bring compensation booklet that would authorize that, or if we're not comfortable with doing that right now, a compensation booklet that would not authorize that.
Then from that decision, so what you're saying is it's not going to come back in a budget parameter.
No.
It's going to come back with.
It has to come back, and it has to come back as the real thing.
Right. So when and if the board votes on one of them, they'll nullify another item on the agenda.
Yes.
Okay. You'll do it 2 times.
So
That's just the mechanics. of
that's
it.
next month, but I know Mr. Finley was waiting on you're waiting on tax data?
Yep.
Okay, so for tax data, John, what are you waiting on to make a decision one way or the other? What information do you need to make a decision next month, so we're not, so? You just want to go back and look at it again? All right.
And we can resubmit all the materials from the workshops, kind of what we've been talking about all along. It's a lot.
Thank you. The board will now adjourn in a closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Section 551.074, authorization to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or to hear a complaint or charge against an officer or employee. 551.072, authorization to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if deliberation in an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governmental body in negotiations with a third person. 551.076, deliberations regarding security devices or security audits. He's saying 5 minutes to 35 minutes. No, I'm just about 30 minutes. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Get your hopes up. Time is now 8:10. time is it? Where's that? Where's my agenda? All right. We have reconvened at 9:07. Thanks to you all who have stayed. Back in open session, the board reconvened for closed session. Request for board action and employment of contractual personnel, presented by Linda Cannon.
Yes, the positions that were provided during closed session are replacing positions for the 18-19 school year, and these positions will be funded from the 18-19 general operating budget.
Mr. President, I move the Board of Trustees approve the employment list as presented of contractual personnel for 2018-2019 school year.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Request for board action, employment of Ray D. Corbett, Junior High School Principal, presented by Linda Cannon.
Yes, the position of the Ray D. Corbett Junior High School Principal is replacing a budgeted position for the 18-19 school year and is funded from the 18-19 general operating budget.
Mr. President, I move the Board of Trustees approve the employment of Ray D. Corbett, Junior High School Principal, as presented in closed session for the 2018-2019 school year.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Request for board action, employment of Rose Garden Elementary School Principal, presented by Linda Cannon.
The position of the Rose Garden Elementary School Principal is replacing a budgeted position for the 18-19 school year and will be funded from the 18-19 general operating budget.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the employment of Rose Garden Elementary School Principal for the 2018-2019 school year.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Right, okay. Motion passes 6-0. Request for board action, employment of curriculum and a professional development director, presented by Linda Cannon.
Yes, the position of the Curriculum Professional Development Director is replacing a budgeted position for the 18-19 school year and will be funded from the 18-19 general operating budget.
Mr. President, I move the Board of Trustees approve the employment of Curriculum and Professional Development Director as presented in closed session for the 2018-2019 school year.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I would just point out again that this is a position that we are replacing someone. This is not a new position. This is a position where we have had someone in that spot for several years, and we are replacing someone who has moved to another school district and bettered their situation.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Request for board action, employment of secondary education director, presented by Linda Cannon.
Yes, the position of the Secondary Education Director is replacing a budgeted position for the 18-19 school year and will be funded from the 18-19 general operating budget.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the employment of secondary education director for the 2018-2019 school year.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I would point out here also that this is a position that we are replacing someone who's been in that position for several years. It's not a new position.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Jerry, Mr. Perkins, board update.
First thing we have, there's a coffee with the chamber the last Friday of this month. Everyone is welcome to attend. There's on the 4th of July, we have the shirts parade, and several of us have volunteered to participate. I'm sure we've got our invitations. Any of the others are welcome to join us. TASB Summer Leadership in Fort Worth, Mr. Westbrook will be attending. The regular chamber luncheons, Tri-County will have one in July, and there's a Northeast Partnership on the 12th of July, and then the Church Chamber luncheon is on the 17th of July. That'll be the same day as our next meeting.
And Wayne, that is the date that Maggie Titterton said we could pilot the community survey. Just FYI, July 17. Yeah, so someone will have to take away from Team 1 and go explain it right at the end.
Mr. President, on the July
Yes.
4th, I haven't RSVP'd to that yet, but unless something catastrophic happens, I'll be there.
Yeah, so this involves something new in that we're decorating the float. I'm going to use air quotes. And so we'll need to be up here at, what time in the morning, Priscilla?
7.
Okay, and I would just recommend sunscreen.
Sunscreen, 7:45 we show and start decorating.
Yeah, although we're trying to maximize that, I will wash my trailer. It is a stock trailer, only occasionally, so but I'll make sure it's nice and clean.
What about the, is there a standard dress that we're all dressing, or what are we doing?
Yeah, we do, did you get some hats and things, Priscilla? So we do have some hats and things, and so it's up to you all if we want to,
The red public ed shirts.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah, our red public ed shirts. We could probably
Blue or red
hustle you
shirts?
one up if you want. Well, I think that's fine, an SCUC shirt or the red or the blue.
Red, white, and blue.
Oh, wait, we do have red T-shirts. We do, we just use one of those ones that we give to those, we'll get you one of those. Yeah, I know a guy, we can get you one.
TASA and TASB registration opened on the 19th, and the conference will be held September 27th through the 23rd, or the 30th, I'm sorry. And I don't remember where, though.
Austin.
Austin.
And going, 27th is my birthday, so.
So you're treating?
I don't mind if y'all take me out.
And then I did say the regular board on the 17th. This shows that 24th is a regular board meeting.
Yes. It's the fourth Tuesday in July.
Okay, so so I'd said the 17th, but it's not the 17th, it's the 24th.
Yep.
Anything to be put on the, any agenda items? Anybody wants to place on the agenda?
I just want to, I attended the SLI last week. Dr. Gibson and Robert, myself, presented good governance at one of the morning sessions. But it was a great SLI conference, I thought. It had some really good speakers. I went to a couple of the school safety seminars, sessions, and I got some really good information, I thought. But more than that, I wanted to commend our high schools on their graduations this year. I was not able to attend Allison Steele, but I did get to go to Clemens and to Byron Steele, and 600-something kids, 500-something kids, and 600-something with Clemens and 500-something with Steele. I was amazing that it's a great ceremony. It was really good. I thought everybody did real well, so I appreciate what the staffs did. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. And I will say that I know there was a submission for a safety issue at NSBA for the presentation. There were no less than 7 or 8 safety issues or school safeties at SLI, and they were all well attended. So if Shirt Cibolo Universal City Independent School District gets picked, I think it's going to be jam-packed because people are begging for best practices moving forward. So hopefully we get accepted, but it's a hot topic item. There's nothing further. I'm looking for an adjournment. So moved, 9:16. Thank you very much.